Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. It's springtime. I've been spending a lot of time in the garden, and it's almost all planted. And pretty soon I'm going to have all of those fresh tomatoes and herbs and all that good stuff. And that's just put me in the mood for some Tuscan chicken cannellini soup. The beauty of this soup, besides its fresh and varied flavors, is that it's a whole meal in one pot and can be done in about an hour. Before we start cooking, give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you like our videos. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you get a notice when we post new videos. Now let's get cooking. Now you may wonder why this is Tuscan chicken soup instead of just any old chicken soup, and it's the ingredients. Tuscan style cooking is lots of fresh ingredients, no heavy sauces, and lots of herbs. So we're going to start here with 2 pounds of chicken. I'm using boneless, skinless thighs. I've got 3 carrots and 2 celery sticks. I've got some fresh herbs, sage and basil, and that, along with some dried oregano over here because I don't have fresh, is common to Tuscan food. I've got 2 onions. I've got some minced garlic. I have a little paprika, and I use that to add color and flavor to the chicken. This is 2 15.5-ounce cans of cannellini beans. These are very commonly used in Tuscan cooking, and they are wonderful. And then, of course, olive oil. No butter in this dish. Olive oil all the way. Red pepper flakes instead of black pepper, or you can go the other way if you prefer, but these add their own wonderful flavor. I've got a quart of chicken stock. You can use chicken broth. I have back here a large can of diced tomatoes, and I have a pack of fresh spinach. I'm going to use about a double handful of that. Now this is 2 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken thighs. And you can use breast if you like, but I prefer the thighs because they just stay juicier and more tender. I patted these dry with a paper towel, and I'm cutting them into about 1-inch cubes so they'll cook quickly. If you find any fairly large pieces of fat on this, you can trim it off, but you don't have to. A little chicken fat adds to the flavor and the tenderness, so you just follow your own desires on that. So I've prepared about a tablespoonful of kosher salt and a teaspoonful of paprika, and I'm going to sprinkle that as evenly as I can all through the chicken. And I'm going to start this chicken cooking while I prep the vegetables. I'll meet you at the stove. So I have just enough olive oil to cover the bottom of my big 7-quart Dutch oven. This recipe makes a lot of soup. And my plan is to freeze a lot of it for meals later, but you may prefer to cut it in half if you don't want this much. I have my temperature on medium. When you're cooking with olive oil, you don't ever want to cook on high heat. I put 1 piece in, and I'm going to wait for a little bit of sizzle, and then I'll start to add the rest of it, the rest of the chicken. You want to spread it out a little bit, as much as you can. Our goal here is just to get a little bit of browning on the chicken, and when I get it all in the pot, I'm going to leave it to sizzle at medium to low heat while I go and prepare the vegetables. And I did pop back to turn this once. I've got my vegetables all chopped up in the food processor. So you know, arthritis, no more chopping for me. My son gave me a lovely little 7-cup KitchenAid with a good slicing blade, and that's how I prepare my mirepoix now. So I've got a little browning on this. I'll be back as soon as I finish with the veggies. Here are my onions, carrots, and celery, all chopped up nicely. I've chopped them small enough that they won't have to cook too long. Once I get the veggies in, I'm going to let them simmer with the chicken just until the onions are good and wilted. And to help wilt the vegetables, we're going to sprinkle some salt on top. This is, I don't know, half teaspoon, something like that. I'm just going to sprinkle it around. This is a lot of vegetables, so I'm sure I'll have to add some more later. Now we'll add our herbs, and what I had was like 2 long pieces of basil, about maybe 6 inches, and a couple of sprigs of sage. And if you'll look, I've chopped it up. It's a handful, and that's the only way I know to tell you how much to put in here. If you were buying it in little packs from the grocery store, it's probably a half a pack of each. I just urge you not to be skimpy with the herbs. Then I'm going to add a teaspoonful of dried oregano because I don't have fresh oregano, but I would use fresh if I had it. And if you don't have these fresh herbs, don't let that keep you from making this dish. You can use dried, about, I'd say, a heaping teaspoonful of the sage and the basil. Now I've let that all simmer together, and I'm going to add a tablespoonful of minced garlic. That would probably be 4 or 5 cloves if you were making fresh garlic. And then I'm going to add about a half a teaspoonful of red pepper flakes. And you can use black pepper if you'd prefer, but we were talking about the Tuscan style, so red pepper flakes fits with that profile. And I have to, full disclosure here, this was sort of the bottom of the jar of my red pepper flakes, and they were much hotter than normal. So you want to add the red pepper flakes to your taste. So that pretty much covers our herbs and spices, and I know that's a lot, but really that profile is just delicious. So I'm going to add a quart of chicken stock or chicken broth, whichever one you prefer. Then the 2 cans of cannellini beans, and I'm not draining them, by the way. If you've never tried cannellini beans, I really suggest you do. You can buy them dried or in cans, and I have planted them in my garden and grown them, and they're just wonderful fresh. And here's a hint for you. They make wonderful baked beans. And they're also often specified in Tuscan type recipes. Then we're going to add our tomatoes. I have diced and pureed tomatoes here. If you want to use your home canned tomatoes, that's fine. These big cans are almost a quart. So when I get these tomatoes stirred in, I'm going to turn the heat up a little. I've had it on medium low this whole time, 4 out of 9 on my dial. So I'm going to turn my heat up a little bit to maybe medium high because I want it to come to a good simmer. We've added almost all our ingredients. So now I'm going to taste it for salt. You'll remember we salted the chicken, and then I salted the mirepoix, the vegetables, when they started. But we've added a lot of stuff to this. Tomatoes, beans, and our broth may or may not have had salt in it. Depends on what you buy. And yes, this needs more salt. So, and I still have the spinach to add. So I'm going to add the additional salt. And I'm glad I tasted it because it did need salt. And that is almost a teaspoonful of salt. And you're going to do that to your taste. But with a pot this big, a teaspoonful of salt is not a lot. And if I add it now, people won't have to add it at the table. So let's see if that's the right amount of salt. So good. So all that's left to add is the spinach. And I've sort of chopped it up a little bit, and I have about 2 cups of spinach to add to this. And I know it's hard to tell with spinach unless you weigh it, and it weighs almost nothing. But that's about 2 cups of chopped up spinach. And I'm going to set my timer for 15 minutes and let all of these flavors come together and wilt the spinach, and I'll be back. And after 15 minutes simmering, this is what we've got. And look at this. This is, not only is it wonderful, it's beautiful. When you bowl this up, you have all those wonderful colors and that lovely tomato broth. This is going to be so good. I'm ready for dinner. You know, I cannot overstate the smell, the aroma from this. All of those herbs cooked together. It's beautiful. Now, traditionally, you would serve this with a big chunk of crusty Italian bread. I am skipping the bread tonight, but I'm just going to let you know, you would usually serve this with a chunk of bread. And I'm going to start out by just tasting the broth because, you know, if all you had was the broth, it would be wonderful. But I do want to get a big old spoonful of all this great chicken, veggie, herb mixture. I gotta tell you, it's really, really hot. So let me get a good spoonful with a lot of stuff in it. About like that. I got a little piece of everything, I think. This really is a meal in a bowl. And it really did take only about an hour with prep and everything. And you know, much of the prep you could do ahead. I really hope you try this, and I think if you do, it might become one of your summer staples. Pretty quick to cook, no oven, fresh veggies, lots of flavor. I want to thank you for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. Hope to see you again tomorrow.